becomes the real challenge if you're out there trying to convert to underground in neighborhoods. So I would say we think of different pieces of equipment, we think of new technology, and all those things combined, how do we design it in a better way?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Couple other questions that are coming through is, are we in danger of a Texas-sized catastrophe in Oregon? I mean, the thing that was so terrifying about Texas is like they ran out of power, right? You know, because of
Right.
of power stations actually going offline. What can we hope to learn about what PGE is doing in Oregon where that wouldn't happen here?
Well, there's a couple of things, and if I just gave a quick context of what took place in Texas, both in their natural gas plants and their wind farms. So the wind farms, the turbine blades, do you have defrosting in that or not? That's very common in the northern states, Michigan or Wisconsin or Montana, Washington, and so you can operate in cold temperatures. Even in the natural gas plants, they don't close them in, they don't have preheating, and so they couldn't even operate their natural gas plants. So at that point, they had no energy to be able to serve customers. And so even if the transmission distribution system is up and functioning, unlike ours at the time, theirs was up and functional, but they had no energy to supply. So you're right, it's a different issue, but did you build the resiliency into those generating facilities to be able to withstand a cold temperature? And so I think there's going to be some lessons learned. 2011, the same thing happened there. And so I know there'll be some new actions, probably some new direction that takes place on that behalf. But we're watching it. What we're doing here in the Northwest is called regional resource adequacy. And there's some actions here in Oregon, as well as regionally from all of us, because we are all connected, that we need to be able to see what energy is out there. And we've had plenty of capacity in the past, but we take out coal plants. We have seen the increase of data centers and usage. All the aluminum plants that went out have now been replaced, like I say, with data centers, et cetera. And so we need to make sure that we have reliability in our system. We have the energy. And so there have been a couple of close calls the last few years. And I won't go into details on that, but know that we need to do and think ahead in terms of resource adequacy.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. And then, I mean, we could probably talk for 3 hours about this stuff, but one thing that I think is also on people's mind is, you know, certainly we know PGE is committed to decarbonizing our energy sources. And does that make us more vulnerable to I guess, interruptions in power going forward, or less, or hard to say?
Well, it certainly can, and lots of different ways to think about it. We're starting to look at, you know, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you've got to have an energy supply that does you know, provide the energy that we need at all times. And so right now, that would be through natural gas plants, or as we take the coal out. We are very fortunate in the Northwest. We do have hydro facilities. So in the Northwest, about 50% of the supply is through you know, hydro facilities. Looking in toward the future though, batteries are a great source of energy holding. It's usually only good for 4 to 8 hours. So a storm like this, you only got 48 hours, not enough if it goes on for days. So there is a lot of discussion, research that's going on with hydrogen. I will say that's probably the next source, that you take renewables and you create hydrogen. Hydrogen can be stored. Salt caves in Salt Lake is a good example of that right now that's being created. We even have our mist facility over here on the coast that we inject down into the earth, natural gas, and we hold it and then we take it out. Well, that could be hydrogen the same way. So so that's an alternative that we're going to be looking into the future. But what I would say is that we have to be very protective between now and I'll say 2030, when those types of resources become available. We're taking out carbon and we're putting in renewables, but are we doing it fast enough? Are we putting in enough renewables to be able to offset what we're taking out? And so that's the challenge we have between now and 2030.
Great, thank you. There's a specific question here from Bob Johnson. And Bob, do you want to ask a question directly, or do you want me to go ahead and read it? I think you're here somewhere, Bob. Feel free to, I guess, May, did you have to unmute Bob Johnson? There's Bob.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, great.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much. I am the president and CEO of Terwilliger Plaza, continuing care retirement community just outside the downtown. And we had a portion, probably 75 or so vulnerable seniors who were without power for 5 days or more. I finally got power back on Friday about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It seemed like it was a relatively minor fix on that, because by the time they got out to our street, it only took an hour to fix it. And I'm wondering why, with that many seniors there, why we didn't have a higher priority, why we had to wait for 5 days. It seems like we would have been a higher priority to be fixed.
Thank you, Bob, and really appreciate the question. And I'm thinking back now to Friday and hearing that very discussion from some of our key account managers. Why was that missed? Why wasn't that on? So I would say that, again, priorities that we've had were centered around certainly hospitals, emergency centers, and water, wastewater, and then senior centers. And Bob, my apologies to you. I'm not sure why that center was not on the list. So what we're doing is we're collecting, updating, making sure that we have up-to-date lists. So things of that nature come to the highest priority when we do get into these situations. And so I can't answer why it was missed, but I know it was.
Okay, who do I need to be in contact with to make certain that we get on the list? Who would I do?
Well, I know your Terwilliger Park Plaza, there we go, is list. But I'm going to ask Brooke Brownlee, who's on the call here with me. We're going to take that back, and maybe Bob, can we send you a note to that effect to confirm?
I will connect Brooke with Bob.
That's
All
great.
right. Thank you very much, Representative Reynolds. Larry, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I thought, great question here by Diana and Kevin Smiley. Probably you both came up with it, but maybe just one of you did. But what is the role of conservation? So what is PGE doing to educate and promote energy conservation, no matter what the source of energy is?
You know, we've been great here in the Northwest, and this goes back 30 plus years back to the Hood River Conservation and Energy Efficiency. And we've, effectively changed building codes very well here in the Northwest to make sure that energy efficiency is the lowest cost resource that we have out there. So I would say, first and foremost, we continue to promote that. I think you're all familiar with the Energy Trust of Oregon and their role that we fund, and making sure that energy efficiency is high priority. The second now is what I would call flexible load, because when we think about dynamic devices, and I'm not sure, Representative Reynolds, if any of your neighborhoods are in our smart grid test beds. We have 3 beds. One is in Northeast Portland, one is in Milwaukee, and then one in Hillsborough area, where customers, and actually all customers right now can participate. Can participate in the demand response program, where you get credits back if you do participate in. Let's say we have a peak day, and we can actually ask you, or we can work with you now with your thermostat. We can turn your thermostat down 3 degrees or up 3 degrees, depending on if it's summer or winter. And when you think about that, you probably don't sense it in your home that you're 3 degrees for say 3 or 4 hours. But if 900,000 customers do that, it's a huge benefit. And so we, right now, even with the limited number of customers that we have participating, it's about a 75 megawatt impact that's happening. And so it really helps us during those peak periods. I'd like to have a 500 megawatt virtual power plant, is what we call it, out of our distribution, using all of you to participate. And actually you get credits for that. So it should be a win-win for you and the utility to be able to manage our loads during those peak periods of time. And if you think about thermostats, hot water tanks, obviously electric vehicles coming, if you've got photovoltaics on your roof or batteries in your garage, all those elements, we're gonna have smart appliances going into the future. We want them to all participate.
Great, thank you for that. I'm going to ask Terry Mills to unmute herself and ask her question. I will say, even though Terry was without power, she managed to testify on behalf of a gun violence prevention bill on Thursday, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Terry, go ahead. I see you have a question here.
Thank you so much for taking the time, and thanks for all that you did for us during this horrible crisis. It's not that we're not appreciative. But I just want to know why it's so hard for PG&E to not give us an update, any updates at all. Like every day we look at the website hour by hour, there was no change in the information. You know, we tweet it to you and it was like, oh, we're sorry, your power's out. And, you know, we're in, let's see, I think we're in 2021 now. And it seems during an emergency, which this was, that you might want to appoint a communications person who just can put up some updates on your website. Like, we're sorry, but it's not going to be returned. Your power will not be returned in the next 24 hours. Or we are having a crew there and we do think it will be returned in 24 hours. It was just so frustrating and really disheartening. So I just hope that you'll consider that. I mean, I put in the chat, I'm a nurse. When our patients go into the OR, we're very good about updating the family as to what stage of the procedure their family is in. And that's all we're asking for, some information. So thank you. Thanks, Lisa.
Terry, thank you very much for bringing that up. And know that we are in this learning stage. It was Friday, we brought out a new map and trying to do something a little different. I'll just say that was on the fly. And our GIS team, you know, kind of coming together with our customer team. We need to do that. That's if there's one takeaway from this more than anything else, it is communications of this nature. And I've got to figure out a better way to be able to tell you when that patient's going into the OR. I can tell you exactly what's happening while they're in the OR. I can't tell you when they're going to get into OR. So that's we need to really work. So thank you, Terry, for bringing it up. Know that that's a learning we're going to take away from this particular outage. Transforming ourselves, you're exactly right. We're in the 22nd century. How do we look at that? We need to advance ourselves.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I do think that, you know, it's challenging. I think we are, you know, appropriately, we've really got it. We've become used to having, just overall in life, having access to information at our fingertips. And I think that's really enhanced kind of human experience. And I do, you know, someone mentioned in the past, they felt that when they were able to call PGE and talk to a person, they would get a little bit more of at least a general idea of when they could expect power back on. We all understand this was unprecedented, but I do think that would be an excellent goal going forward. I think some of the, I will admit, I'm very fortunate I didn't lose power. I'm in new construction. I'm sure everything's buried. You know, but I know when I've been in situations where I've lost power and what I've heard repeatedly from constituents and friends, it's the not knowing, you know, do I need to make other arrangements or is this going to come on tonight? So I'm sure you're very well aware of that, Mr. Bekkedahl, and I'm grateful for you being here to, you know, be able to address that issue. I am looking through questions. I think that
maybe Representative Reynolds, there's one question. Maybe it's on the tree trimming.
Yes, great.
And I think that's probably, you know, especially when we look at this, Mother Nature did a lot of tree trimming this week. And it's just incredible how many trees have been damaged and broken. And I was watching a little bit of a news clip where a homeowner had 40 different trees on their property just around their house that had been torn and damaged. And first of all, I would say the cleanup of all the trees, et cetera, is going to take an extensive amount of time, and it's very expensive. One of my coworkers had 4 trees removed here this week, and it was $900. And so I encourage us to, if we can help our neighbors, there's some way that we need to be thinking about, but there's just trees in backyards. They've, you know, blocking driveways, alleyways. But as we think about trimming trees, one of our big issues, we've always trimmed for compliance, and it was the safety of public. And from an outage standpoint, normally not a bad thing, but in this case, we have all the ice and snow, trees falling everywhere. I think when we think about resiliency or we think about reliability, we're going to have to ask ourselves types of trees, where they're located, how is it best to manage trees going forward, and do that in a smarter way. So I just bring that up that all of us are going to have to work together in communities to do a better job in thinking about vegetation management. It is 50% of our caused outages on a normal year, not just, you know, when we think of an incident like this.
Interesting. I didn't realize that 50%. Yeah. And I did read in the Oregonian that I guess the city of Portland, when you go to plant trees in your, especially if it's on the causeway or something, the city of Portland really encourages, I don't think it requires, but really encourages big, tall, huge trees to get that wonderful, you know, cover. But then that's not always necessarily the best thing because they grow up in, you know, into the power line. So it is interesting to be balancing all that. Obviously the big, huge trees are better for decreasing greenhouse gases and things like that. So it's a lot of balancing act. One last question here, which I thought was interesting. My friend Judy. Judy, would you like to ask that? Judy, you had a dramatic transformer incident actually in your yard.
We had a fire in the power pole right outside our house, very near to a big tree that seemed to have started because the neighbors' very heavy branches just yanked out a high voltage power line, and it started a small smoldering fire that eventually burned a foot off the top of the power pole, which crashed into the street and sent sparks into the transformer. So needless to say, the fire department said, hey, PG&E, we can't do this, you have to do it. Thank God you did send a crew out. We were shocked it happened after dark, but we only had 48 hours of power outage. But my question is about rooftop solar panels, because we have thought for many years we should put solar panels on our house, but now I'm kind of wondering, how did rooftop solar panels tolerate the ice and the trees and branches falling on them? Do you have a sense of that?
You know, I haven't heard much of any, I'm certain damage if trees fall on them. They're just going to be like your shingles on your roof and everything else. They'll be severely impacted. And the panels that are crushed and, you know, are not going to be repairable. You'll have to replace those panels, but it's not the whole entire roof. Typically, it's probably just the portion that is damaged by the tree. And it certainly is not going to produce as much when you reduce the number of panels available. And did it impact the connections going into down through the house to the inverter, which, you know, converts it and goes into the grid? I have not heard a lot on that behalf. It's a very good question, Judy, and something to be thinking about. But obviously, if you did have a battery, you had a solar panel, if you're able to operate and maintain, if the sky is not too gray, you would be able to produce some energy during that, you know, period of time, where that's what we refer to as microgrids. And you know, where various emergency centers are actually now, Beaverton is a great example where they have put in a microgrid. And I know one of the winter storms here this year where everything in the neighborhood was dark except them. And so there's opportunities. That's how you build resiliency into the grid to be able to put that type of equipment in. So I can't answer your question directly. I apologize about the solar panels. We'll have to hear, because there's quite a few of them down in the Salem area. We'll have to hear how things survived.
Thank you.
And I
Right.
would make a quick note that we
Yes.
are actually working on a bill this session around resiliency that would allow us to better partner with communities and cities around those types of projects that Larry was talking about. Not individual homes, to be clear, but for, you know, a gathering point or a fire station, that type of project.
Great. Thanks, Brooke, too. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bekkedahl and Brooke, and Andrea's here too. I saw her. My folks I know from PGE. Really grateful for all you're doing. I appreciate the admission that there's always room for improvement. And I certainly in some of the hearings I've seen with CEO Maria Pope and other staffers, I can tell you all are working really, really hard and already thinking about how can we prevent this, going forward in the future. So thank you so much for your work. Good luck in getting those last 24,000. I know people are anxious to all be reconnected. And thank you again. I'm really grateful for your time tonight. We all are.
Thank you, Representative Reynolds. And nice. Didn't get to actually meet all of you, but it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you all.
Yeah, next time in the high school gym, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so team rest. So that was just totally fascinating, really interesting. And I know a lot of people are still obviously expressing a lot of frustration, but really grateful that we were able to have time with the people who are, really at the top of the food chain, so to speak, with PGE. And I will be connecting Bob with PGE. So we'll make sure Terwilliger Plaza is up on that list. And if something else comes up that y'all are thinking about, don't hesitate to reach out to us through my rep Lisa Reynolds account. And we can keep chipping away at this stuff. From what I could tell in district, it was kind of random, somewhat random, who lost power, just in terms of talking to folks. I joked that, I was in touch with Judy, and then our other friend, Kate Sheriff, who was at my constituent coffee, they were both out of power. And I was joking, okay, now I'm going to text the 62,472 other constituents and see how they're doing. But really, I do want to know always how folks are doing. I just happen to have my finger on the pulse of a couple of my friends who happen to be constituents. I wanted to change gears here a little bit. I'm looking at my I have my little ring light on, but I don't have other light, and because it got really dark here in the last few minutes. So just personally, some legislative news from our office. I mentioned Terry was able to find a power source in order to testify on behalf of a gun violence prevention bill. Well, Judy also, they're wearing their Moms Man Action shirts tonight. Judy also testified along with myself and some other legislators on behalf of a bill that it's House Bill 2543, and it seeks to close the Charleston loophole for when people are attempting to purchase guns. So when you go to purchase a gun, 9 times out of 10, the background check that needs to happen in order for you to be cleared to buy that gun goes through pretty quickly. And you can usually complete the sale when you on the day that you go to purchase that gun. In a smaller percentage of cases, the background check does not go through. There's a glitch, there's a flag, there's a address discrepancy. And those cases then require further investigation by the Oregon State Police. As it stands right now, if that investigation is not complete within 3 business days, federal law allows the gun seller to release the gun, to complete the sale. And we know that those folks whose background checks require further investigation have a much higher percentage of true problems with their background that would prohibit them from purchasing a gun. So what the House Bill 2543 will do is to allow law enforcement the time it needs to complete that investigation before we clear someone to purchase a handgun or any gun, I'm sorry. So I thought we put together a really great presentation to the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday. As I mentioned, Terry testified, Judy testified. I was there with Reverend Sharon Risher, who lost her mother and two of her cousins and many friends in the shooting at, she calls it Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. I know it as Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, but Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston in 2015. So I think we all probably remember that shooting in Charleston. The shooter in that case was able to purchase his gun through that loophole. He was a prohibited purchaser, but because the background check wasn't complete, he was able to procure his gun. He was a white supremacist. He was welcomed into a prayer circle and killed 9 people. So that's why it's called closing the Charleston loophole. We've been working on this in Oregon for 5 years, which is as long as I've been involved with Moms Demand Action. So it was a particular honor to be the one kind of shepherding it through the process this time, and to have Sharon Risher back virtually. She actually flew to Oregon in 2016. It was the first time she spoke publicly about the shooting. So anyway, so we are hopeful. I'm just really proud of the work that you know, the Moms Demand Action folks and all of those who are working hard to prevent gun violence. And we'll keep you posted on how that goes. And so that's the main legislative update I have. I'm looking at my notes. You know, in terms of other bills that I'm working on, you know, a lot of it right now is focused on committee work. And as Maida knows, I don't know if I can get through a behavioral health committee hearing anymore without crying. And whether it's crying with some relief that it feels like there are some ways forward to really improve mental health services for Oregonians, but also crying hearing stories that are not unlike stories I've experienced with my brother, of how difficult life is for those who are mentally ill, especially if they either don't have access to services or if they become involved with law enforcement. So it's really an honor to be part of finding solutions that are easier said than done, in most part because of money. And we need to just really think about what we stand for as a state and who we take care of in our budget. So as you guys know, I always like to do a COVID update because it is still a really important issue. I mean, the ice storm kind of pushed it off to the side a little bit, and the ice storm really impacted our vaccination rates. Oregon had been kind of in the top, I think, 15 or 20 states, in, certainly 15 states in percent of people that we had vaccinated. We are now in the bottom half, although at the top part of the bottom half, whatever that means, the third quartile. Terry is herself a vaccinator. I will be trained next week to be a vaccinator as well. So we're all working hard to make up for lost time, and to really get jabs in arms, as we like to say. I am going to pull up a few slides here. So here we are. Here's our town hall. This is just a graph that just gives me so much pleasure to share. And I'm going to move this. Sorry. I may just have to do that. I'm going to just have to. Okay, this is a graph that gives me tremendous pleasure to share. I think we're about a month ago we were here, and that was super exciting. But to see these numbers still going down, this is number of cases, and to see that our 14-day change, we're down 38%. And the deaths in Oregon are down as well. I mean, the rate of rise of deaths, I should say. Oregon has experienced about 152 cases of COVID and around 2,000 deaths. So our case rate is down 38% over a 2-week period. And I remember back in December, these numbers were like 15, 20% increase week over week. So this is really, really reassuring to see. And we're at, so that's where we are. I was looking at, I don't know if you guys get the New York Times. I'm sure you guys have heard that the US is set to reach an almost unthinkable milestone, which is we are close to 500,000 people dead from COVID. I think if you would have, a year ago, if you would have asked what numbers we'd be looking at, I never in a million years would have dreamed or nightmared that we were going to have, 500,000 people in the US dead from COVID-19. Excuse me. And if we kind of correct population, if Oregon were kind of at the same rate as we are as a whole as a nation, we would have had 6,500 deaths instead of 2,000. So I know we've made a lot of sacrifices and changes in how we're living our lives, and it really has worked and made a difference. Now we have to figure out how to change slides. I don't know. This could be. So the other thing I would like to do, which I may not be able to, oh, there we go. Luddite that I am. This is not where I want to be. I was just going to once again share with you all the information on how to get, sorry, people, what is going on? I mean, I know what's going on. It's that I don't really know what I'm doing. Share with you once again where we are in vaccinating. So wow, Lisa, just stop touching stuff. Sorry. These are the same resources I've been sharing since nothing new on resources to try to find an appointment, except that the drugstores are now vaccinating. I know, I saw Betsy here. I know Len got vaccinated at Safeway. I know some people have been vaccinated through Costco. So, and now that bottom line, you can't see it on my screen, but I don't want to mess with it. But Albertsons, Safeway, Costco, Health Mart are now up and running with vaccines, and it's through their individual websites. And I'm just going to stop screen sharing now. So it is, again, the resources are not new. The resources are overburdened. I've tried a few times today on the chat bot on the vaccine site through OHA. I tried the phone number, still not able to get appointments just randomly. So it does take time and effort and repeated tries. I kind of joke, it's like how we used to have to get Springsteen tickets back in the 80s before the internet, but I shouldn't joke about it. I know it's super, super frustrating for people. We are starting tomorrow, people 70 and older can get the vaccine, and a week from tomorrow will be people 65 and older. And as you all know, Oregon's among the last in the country to be vaccinating our older Oregonians, and I know that's frustrating and problematic, and yeah, that's where we are right now. So that's really all I had to say. I do have, if you were paying attention to all my out of order slides, I certainly have time to talk about if we want to look at screenshots on how to watch a hearing, because I know that is something I had a lot of folks watching the hearing on Thursday. But I think more importantly, let's just open it up for questions. And if there's an appetite to learn about how to watch a committee meeting or a hearing, we can certainly go over that too.
And if you'd like to just use the raise hand feature, or you can put the question in the chat as well.
And Cheryl, I see you. I mean, I totally understand the frustration. I will say that I share the frustration about Oregon being so behind in vaccinating the elderly, which was a concerted, choice to vaccinate teachers first. And I will totally say that it feels particularly frustrating because there's still a big lag before schools open, a bigger lag than we got to wait till everyone's vaccinated for schools to open. Oh, okay, great, thank you.
So we
And
do
those, and Terry, those resources are more about getting put on an information link, or those resources that actually enable folks to make appointments.
I thought that it was helpful to make appointments too.
Great, okay,
Because
thank you.
that's what Representative Graber had shared with us,
Great,
information. So yeah.
great.
And I think we're getting 106,000 doses next week, and it's supposed to keep going up and up and up. So it will, even though it's very frustrating, it's the same thing as PGE. The unknown is really scary and it's frustrating. But I think a month from now, we'll look back and a lot more people will be getting vaccinated. So we just have to sit tight and keep trying for those appointments. I also know that Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, they're giving 5,000 doses this coming week. So things are happening. Yeah, yeah. And I'm a medical lead for Washington County MRC, so I'm in the know, and that's kind of fun. But yeah, things are happening.
Things are happening. I know. And Oregon, you know, and I think, and I totally empathize with Cheryl's comment about being slow on vaccinating our elderly, and I will be very happy when our older Oregonians are vaccinated. I'll just be really happy when our number starts going up in terms of percent of people who've had the first dose, which is right now 6%. I'm sorry, 13% have had one dose, about 6% have had 2 doses. And okay, I will get to, Mr. Chris Kobe, let's unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. A quick question. I hope it'll take less than a minute. Some of us will be testifying before the legislature. We're trying to influence people like you. What are your suggestions on testifying as a witness before the legislature? Thank you.
Great question. It's almost like I planted that. I do really think stories, your story or your motivation for being there is what really matters. I mean, I mentioned how emotional I get when mothers talk about their mentally ill children. And of course, I see it in my exam room as well. And I've experienced it as a sister. So I think people's stories and motivations. I actually talked to a colleague about a bill I'm working on to move towards, the CAHOOTS model, which is to, dispatch social workers and a medic to nonviolent 911 calls, so that we're really, figuring out why, which cat is that, Judy? Why Lexi or Sibo? Lexi. Pardon me. So, and she asked me, and she said, what motivated you to take this on? And I shared the story, and I was really grateful that she asked that, because I definitely shared the story of my brother, who has been, has had 911 called on him. And I'm just very grateful that it was with kind, empathetic policemen who helped him. So thanks, Chris. I think definitely stories and your personal motivation is what really stays with people.
And Representative, we did get a question beforehand from Diana and Kevin Smiley about Rep. Neerman and what's going to happen with his situation. Would you be able to answer that?
Yes, I will answer that, and then I'll ask Dr. Bob Mendelson to ask his question. So you all probably know a little bit about this, but Representative Mike Neerman, when there was a special session in the legislature, December 21st, that's before I was in office, there was a pretty loud and agitated protest out front. And this was, I think, a little bit around Stop the Steal, a little bit around Open the Capitol to the public. You're not letting our voices be heard. People were definitely armed, definitely holding pro-Trump paraphernalia. And the Capitol was closed to the public because of COVID. And Rep. Neerman took it upon himself to let them into the Capitol. And it's, it's all on film, and it's pretty chilling because he let them into the building. They started trying to break down a door, or maybe just create mayhem in this small space. Oregon State Police confronted them. They sprayed Oregon State Police with, I think it was bear spray. So they they accosted Oregon State Police, and there was like a fisticuff scuffle with the policemen. So, you know, there's no question in my mind that Rep. Neerman made the decision to put his colleagues in danger. And I will tell you that my colleagues who are people of color felt particularly worried that day. And again, I wasn't there, but it sounds pretty scary. You could hear people kind of pounding and yelling in the building. And Rep. Neerman should resign or be expelled. There is a process for that. For example, the Oregon State Police has completed their investigation and have turned over their information to the district attorney for Marion County. So there may be criminal charges filed, and it's working its way through what's called the conduct committee of the Oregon House. So a lot of us have come out and said we think he needs to resign or be expelled. And the wheels of justice are moving slower than I would like. Right now, as it stands, he has given over his key. He cannot enter the building of his own volition. If he is going to come into the legislature, into the Capitol, I'm sorry, if he's going to come into the Capitol, he needs to give 24-hour notice, and we all receive an email. So his activities have certainly been curtailed. But I'm hopeful that the process will, you know, justice or whatever will prevail. And I say or whatever, meaning he doesn't need to be convicted of a criminal act to be expelled from the legislature. It's not beyond a shadow of a doubt for the legislature. It's a standard that we don't have to meet. But I think if criminal charges were filed, it would make a pretty strong case for every single legislator. So thank you for that question. Dr. Mendelson, thank you for being here. Dr. Mendelson's a mentor of mine, so really nice to see you here, sir.
Hi, Lisa. It's nice to see you too. I'm delighted to have a person with your background and expertise in such a position of honor and headache in the state of Oregon. I have two concerns, and I wonder if there's anything in upcoming legislation that would be involved with particularly vaping/smoking controls and education, and of course also the anti-vaxxer movement that has caused so much trouble for so many pediatricians and children.
Thank you for that. So I do know that there is a bill around vaping, especially around kids, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know tons about that, but I will get back to you all on that. We'll be doing a follow-up to this evening's event. And in terms of, I don't know if you've heard, I hope I'm not going to be the one who bears the bad news, but the bill that would prohibit non-medical exemptions for vaccines for kids to be in school will not move forward in this session. And so what that means is Oregon has one of the most, I hate to use the word liberal, but the most expansive definition on who can choose to not vaccinate their children and why can they choose that. And it can just be kind of personal decision, personal choice. And we as pediatricians would like to change that to be, you should only be able to decline vaccinating your children if it's because there's a medical reason to not vaccinate your children. And the reason why this is so important is we're all learning about herd immunity because we're talking about COVID vaccine all the time. You need a certain percentage of any community to be immune against a disease in order to prevent it from spreading like wildfire. And it's, kind of depends on the disease, but for example, for measles, we need 92 to 94% of herd immunity to prevent measles spread. And I know we all remember a couple of years ago when measles cases were showing up around the area, and that's because of unvaccinated people, which then put people, even if people are vaccinated, they are at higher risk because not every vaccine is 100% ironclad for every single person who receives it. So that is something that's very, very important to me. I have been doing pediatrics long enough, and I'm sure Dr. Mendelson has too, to remember days when we would see kids either killed or devastated by disease that we now vaccinate against, in particular, Haemophilus flu meningitis, which we just don't see anymore. So the decision was made not to proceed with that bill this year with the thinking, and I actually agree with this thinking as much as I want this bill to move forward, that it might conflate how people look at the vaccine for COVID. Right now, our number one priority as a state, as a public health decision, is we need to build herd immunity against COVID. And we want it to be, people kind of, do we need to be 85? Do we need to be 90, 95? Certainly the higher, the better. I think, Fauci would say we need 85 to 90% herd immunity to really be able to think about returning somewhat more towards the life we had before COVID. And that means herd immunity through previous infection and vaccination, meaning even if you've been infected, you should be vaccinated. But if you haven't been infected, the vaccine will do it. So we were concerned as kind of a coalition of people that if we really started pushing vaccine requirements, that there'd be a little bit of backlash and that some people might take the opportunity to say, well, forget all that. I'm not going to get the COVID vaccine. So we made the tough decision to not move forward this session. I shouldn't say we, I wasn't involved in the decision. I don't mean to shirk responsibility, but I kind of understand the thinking. But it is definitely a high priority for the legislators. And I know it's a high priority for pediatricians and so many in the healthcare community and in the schools. So thanks for that question.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yes. Great. Anything else, Maida?
I think that's all the questions that I got privately as well, although there was a suggestion from Janet to encourage folks to look at NAMI if they want more information about.
Oh, thank you.
things and
Yes,
everything.
National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and Oregon has an incredibly robust chapter. They are at the table with us, figuratively speaking, in the Behavioral Health Committee in creating policy that truly helps people who struggle with mental illness, whether it's making sure that medications aren't changed, midstream because of insurance requirements, to how do we build a better workforce so that we have places to providers for people who are struggling. And they have support groups for family members of those who are mentally ill, things I've partaken in as have my family because of my mentally ill brother. So thank you so much. Great. So National Alliance for Mentally Ill, NAMI, and then the Oregon chapter. We can send that out in a follow-up as well. I really appreciate that, Janet. Great. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for being here tonight. Really nice to see a lot of friendly faces and a few new ones. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have other topics you think would be important to highlight in a session like this, obviously the PGE was particularly, I was able to cobble that together last week because the people I know there, but I think they would have come anyway. But one of my friends is one of the is a spokesperson for PGE and certainly understands all of our frustration with our communication skills. But grateful to see you all. My schedule is roughly, once a month town halls on the third Sunday and once a month constituent coffees on the first Saturday. So every 2 weeks, I'll be performing. No, I'm kidding. I'll be here, but obviously I'm available to anyone, anytime, constituent, non-constituent, our email. I mean, Maida manages the email along with Joe. But I really do want to hear from you. And if there's something on your mind, I want to know about it. So thank you all so much. And I'll see you next time.
Everyone, take care.
Thanks. Cheryl.